Welcome. This is Stories, Wisdom, and Recipes. I'm Lawrence Pugliese, and on today's program we have Owen Baillie, the assistant to the Vice President of Social Justice and Adversity at the Commonwealth Medical College. Before we get to Mr. Baillie, I have a little essay to share with you. It's entitled, Any Man Who Knows a Thing Knows He Knows Not a Damn Thing at All. We're here again to hear again, not to propagate misrepresentations or fear, my friend. The Reverend Dr. King weekend is upon us. As I reflect on his work, I realize I haven't read or written one of these haphazard, episodic set of ramblings for almost 2 years now. As I do scribble these thoughts, I'm also fueled by a melody created by Canaan out of Mogadishu. From Mogadishu through how many channels, including my friend Kieran, to me here with you in Scranton. As odd as it may sound, it amazes me, the prospect. I'm just going to take a minute and let it ride. I'm just going to take a minute and let it breeze. Canaan is an artiste in music. Do you think he was influenced by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in Somalia? Mr. King from these United States? The vastness and smallness of this world inspires, perplexes, overwhelms, comforts, and fuels. What an intellectual boom. Have I been influenced by the Reverend Dr. King? By Canaan? Have you? Happy winter. Crisp, clear, reflective, and agape with questions and hopefully some genuine hope. It's good to be sharing this with you yet again. And now to Mr. Owen Baillie. Seems like we've done this before.
It does. Larry, a pleasure to be back.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. Again, I mentioned, now your title, am I getting it right? It's the assistant to the Vice President of Social Justice and Diversity or Adversity?
And diversity.
And diversity.
Yes.
I could have swore I heard someone say adversity, and I thought, that can't be right. Diversity.
Diversity is correct.
Yeah, adversity might work too.
It might very well work.
It might, in some real sense.
You put a pretty good spin on it,
Yeah.
and I'll take it up for suggestion.
Yeah, we'll talk to Ida about that.
If it involves promotion, right.
We'll get into adversity today. We'll talk a little bit about that. Also, you're on the MLK Commission for the Scranton area.
Correct.
And we are getting ready to go into, while we tape today, the Dr. King weekend, Martin Luther King weekend, MLK Day on Monday. And we'll talk a little bit about Dr. King as well as some of the events that the commission has put together to celebrate his life and his work. But first, I want people to get a sense of who you are. So,
Sure.
first question is a simple one.
What's that?
Where were you born and raised, my friend?
Born and raised in a small town called Miami, Florida.
Never heard of it.
You might have heard of it through some songs, but it's not known to the masses, really.
Moon over Miami.
Yeah. Miami, Florida is where I was born and raised, actually. So, born to Jamaican parents. So that would make me a first-gener.
Yeah.
So I'm a first-generation American.
Yeah.
And very proud and happy to be so.
Would you consider yourself first-generation Jamaican American or just American? Or
I've heard Jamaican. There are a couple hybrids out there.
Really Jamaican?
Yeah, Jamaican. But I consider myself American, but I hold on to the values that my parents have instilled in me. So, but no pretense or anything other than that. I mean, I'm just blessed to be where I am at and happy to be here. So, but I do consider myself first-generation American.
Yeah, well, technically you are.
I am.
I am as well. My parents are from Italy, so I'm first generation. I say Italian American usually. But I don't think of it too much like that. Like, as you were saying, I'm more American, I would say, than I am Italian.
Right.
I go back on occasion, and they think of me as American.
Sure.
They don't think of me as Italian. And here, people, think of me as American. But I'm sure there are certain influences from the Italian heritage that I have that maybe you wouldn't have, and there's certain influences from the Jamaican heritage that you have that I don't have.
I would agree.
But either way, these are categories that we should look at as not divisions, but a means to learn more about the human condition as it exists through different cultures across the planet, don't you think?
I agree. I definitely agree.
That brings me to another point about you, sir.
Me?
An advisory board member you are of United Cultures Leadership Institute at Lackawanna College, and I should mention that this episode of Stories, Wisdom, and Recipes is being underwritten by United Cultures Leadership Institute at Lackawanna College. I'm the director. He's an advisory board member. And that's exciting, isn't it?
It is exciting.
That's how we met, matter of fact. Now, your formal education is what brought you here, post-high school. Your post-secondary education brought you to Scranton.
That's
Tell us
correct.
a little bit about how that happened, from Miami to Scranton.
Sure. It was a complete mistake. No. What happened early on in my meetings with my guidance counselor in high school, I had decided that I was going to leave Florida unless it didn't work out, and my fallback would have been the University of Florida. Not to say it's an easy school or a safety school, it was a great school, but I just wanted to get out and experience something different.
Right.
Outside of Florida. And I had found a few schools in the Northeast United States, one being Bucknell. And when I had come to visit, or when I had made it known that I was going to take a visit out to Bucknell, my neighbor, who is an alumnus of the University of Scranton and has roots in northeastern Pennsylvania, put in a pretty strong plug and made a call and made sure that I was able to get on a tour. And I guess he threw in a strong recommendation and said, you should have him come by your campus. And it worked out. And after the trips were done and all was said, I couldn't get it out of my system.
Really?
Yeah, this town and the college.
Made an impression.
Well, it was also August.
So, you didn't realize the winter.
Right, so I did not realize what was to follow just a few short months in advance. So,
But
ignorance is bliss.
Yeah,
So,
it often is, yeah.
yeah.
Now,
But
that was 10 years ago, so you're still here. You must have gotten used to the winters.
safe to say. I've been told that layering is the art form of the North. So I've added some stuff, some wool, cashmere, and some other blends.
You came in with a real dapper long jacket and a great hat.
I love those hats.
And you even wore your galoshes.
I did. You noticed.
Yeah.
You noticed those. Yeah.
That was cool.
Well, traction.
You're set.
Yeah. I have a high center of gravity, so I'm not one to want to slip on the ice. So.
Yeah, I think you're probably a good foot taller than me.
A foot maybe by 10 inches.
Yeah.
I don't know about 12, but.
Yeah, about 10 inches.
Sure. Yeah. So, but that was my exposure to northeastern Pennsylvania. That was my then exposure to the University of Scranton. So that would answer my formal education.
Well, and what did you focus on when you were studying? Here?
Well, outside of changing the world and saving mankind, I narrowed it down to sports physiology and exercise science. Coming in, I met up with a major called, what is this called? Organic chemistry, which my brain still has difficulty processing, as you can see. And it definitely earned a TKO on my account. Yeah. Twice. Twice.
I hear you. Physics was my real tough one.
Definitely my arch enemy. So I explored other majors and came across business administration and human resources. And that is what I ended up finishing with from the University of Scranton. It was actually a general liberal arts degree with a minor in business administration and also human resources.
So well-rounded. If liberal arts is a well-rounded sort of design.
Absolutely. And it served me well, I think, in retrospect.
And now you're working for the Commonwealth Medical College, again in the Office of the Social Justice and Diversity.
Not adversity.
Diversity.
At least just yet, but
Yeah.
it's diversity, right?
Sometimes there's adversity when dealing with the issues,
Absolutely.
I'm sure. That's part of the issue, adversity.
Sure.
That you're focusing on.
Sure.
Um,
I wasn't joking. I'm definitely going to take that suggestion back. I just hoped a promotion would follow.
It might be too negative. You might be accurate to a certain extent,
Right.
Owen, but it's a bit negative, they might say.
Right.
Say, well, I got it from Pugliese. And they say, oh, okay.
Okay, that makes sense.
We understand.
Okay.
No, I'm a hopeful guy, right?
I would like to think so.
Yeah, we're hopeful guys. Now, there you do some good work. You work with the youth in the United Cultures Leadership Academy, which is part of the Leadership Institute.
Right.
And some of the things that probably fuel you in all of this work are the personal experiences, not just the formal education, the concepts, the theories that you've learned, the skills that you've built through the formal education process, but your personal experiences. What did you learn from those that you use that is still in your head today? And you could share a personal experience if you like.
Sure. Now, these are personal experiences from formal education or outside of the formal
Anywhere.
education, while being here or just throughout my life?
Anything that pops to your head. It could be when you're a little kid in Miami. It
Sure.
could be while you're,
Yeah, there.
a college student, whatever you like.
Well, there are a few that come to my head. I'm sure when we're done or later on this evening, something will pop into my head where I can say, oh,
That
should
was
have
a
mentioned
good
that.
one.
So that is to say that there are many, many key instances in my life and throughout my experience that have obviously impacted me in my decision-making process today, and my thought process. So, but what comes to mind first? God, I'm running a blank, Larry. Well, I give you a little bit more about my background as growing up, because you mentioned being a kid in Miami. So I don't really have the somber story, and I don't have a story of ultra luxe privilege. It's really just middle class growing up. My father passed away when I was fairly young. I was 6 years old from diabetes, and so it was at that point that I thought that I would help my community through that experience in a general awareness of well, Miami's heavily populated by African American, Caribbean, which crosses over into Hispanic and Latino groups, which tend to be more so affected by diabetes and hypertension, high blood pressure. So through my Boy Scout project, I'm actually an Eagle Scout, believe it or not, we formulated I joined a partnership with the ADA, American Diabetes Association, and our troop, and through just general support in my community, we held a 5K walk and run, and it was just a general day for the American Diabetes Association to reach out to the community and promote wellness. And it's funny because I find myself doing that to this day through social justice and diversity, to a smaller extent. So that would be one influence that I believe has carried me. And
The Boy Scouts.
Boy Scouts, absolutely.
See, I have to say this because I have discussions with family members who have my nephews in Boy Scouts, and friends. I have an issue with the Boy Scouts.
What's that?
Well, their stance on homosexuality bothers me.
Okay.
It really does. Otherwise, they do some great things. I wouldn't argue, but that gets under my skin. It does. Does that ever come to mind for you? I mean, you have a personal experience that obviously made a huge impression on you in a positive way.
Sure.
So maybe that's just one little small thing that I'm mentioning. But for me, I had no experience with them, so that's the only thing that really pops up.
Right.
You know.
Right. And no, in my experience, I think that's more at the national chair and council at administrative level. you would think that would filter down to the individual troops and troop leaders, then into the actual Boy Scouts themselves. But I don't recall any such discussions or ideologies in regards to homosexuality at all throughout my time being a Boy Scout, at least in our area.
So they didn't bash it, they didn't exclude people as far as you, yeah.
No.
Yeah, just a little thing, you know?
Yeah, it just seemed to be a moot point, to tell you the truth. As I've grown older, I've heard things, and I've received appeals from the Boy Scout Association, and you always want to make sure, or at least I do, want to make sure where my money's going to, and it looks like they're still running a pretty good operation. So I still support.
Well, I guess if you comb through any institution,
You're going to find something. You're going to find some lint, right?
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Lint, good. You stuck with the.
Stuck with the comb analogy.
You did. That was
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah.
Owen Baillie here on Stories, Wisdom, and Recipes, and now the role of your mother must have been significant after your dad passed on. when you were
Absolutely.
6.
Absolutely.
You know, what kind of role did she have in your life?
I guess I can, a huge role, and I can attribute her philosophies to helping us progress in pretty dire circumstances. My father was, safe to say, they call it the breadwinner, right, I guess, and my mother was more the caretaker. So losing that addition or that asset was tough financially, and that changes the human scape significantly. However, her philosophy and take on life and how I was going to not let that be a problem for my growing up and not make an excuse or having a crutch, so to speak. Looking back on that now was very important. Didn't realize it then.
No.
But she ultimately played the role of mother and father. And it's a delicate balance, and I think it's one that she did extremely well with. So I credit her a lot.
She sounds tough and wise.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Sounds like my mother. Similar. No, kind, loving, but strong.
Strong.
And don't make excuses.
Please don't.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
It is. Don't make excuses. Use your energy, I guess, as she would say, to figure out a solution to the problem, if there is one.
Right, and and I know. I mean, both of us embrace complex scenarios, I think, on purpose, because
I think you're right.
They're challenging.
I think you're right.
And they're important oftentimes if they're so complex to be nurtured, to be navigated, to have some power from people.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
And if you let things beat you up, you can't become cold, you can't become bitter, you can't become disattached, but you also can't roll over and just say, whatever, I'll go with the flow. So you have to find a nice balance where you're still giving it a good amount of your intellect, your heart, and your soul without losing your heart or your soul or your principles. It's that way forever, as long as you live, I would imagine.
I agree, and I'm just thankful to be able to be at a point in my life where I can look back and appreciate it for what it is.
And you're a relatively young man, 28, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Very wise for a 28-year-old, for a 88-year-old, actually. Now, we were talking one day about simplicity in life, and that's sort of a motto you have.
Absolutely.
You want to expound on that?
I can. Keep it simple. Excuse me. Just keep it simple.
You can have some of the vodka if you want.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Good.
Smirnoff? Smirnoff?
Stolen China.
Oh, that's powerful.
Nastrovia.
That's good.
No, it's just water. Especially the cadets, if you're watching. We're just kidding.
Right. It's a joke. It's a joke. 151, I think. Keeping it simple for me is, at times, complex. But I think it's at anything that I have put my attention to making simple, although at times it was complex, was worth it in the end because it eventually just paid for itself. It was work that covered itself in bounds.
Well, what do you try to, what's the point of keeping things simple?
Keeping it simple, keeping it light, and not weighing myself down because for many people, and I think many people will agree, for those viewers and anybody that you talk to, that waking up in the morning and just having a positive attitude, frame of mind, and trying to focus on a clean slate is complex in and of itself.
Yes. And having a lot of, when you say complex, you're talking
It's beautiful to do that, but it's still complex. It's beautiful to wake up.
Oh, yeah. And align yourself?
And align yourself and appreciate your blessings and focus in on, out with the distractions and in with the goals.
What are the distractions?
Anything not associated with achieving your goal. Anything that takes you off of that path. If it's just a millimeter or if it's a yard, however far it removes you from that, that's a distraction.
What if it's a genuinely close friend that is in need of your assistance? Is that a distraction?
It can be.
What about a woman that you're in love with or a man that you're in love with?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a distraction?
It can be.
And how do you deal with them then? You just say, friend, go away, or lover, go away?
Well, that would be a simple way to do it.
Yeah, but it would be.
Yeah, that would be a simple way to do it.
When I say go away, I mean go away, go away.
Right.
Exclamation point, not for now.
Right.
I mean, well, they're in need. Let's say it's not they're not being unfair or they're not being selfish themselves. They generally need you at that point in time. But it's, you're focused on something else. I mean, is it a distraction? I mean, you're saying it is a distraction technically.
Absolutely.
But how do you deal with that sort of distraction? Is it to be simple at that point to get rid of them? In other words, disconnect yourself from them.
Now that filters into the simple solution that ends up becoming extremely complex a little bit later. So
Right.
I would say that's not really simple in the long run. I think what would be to strive for simplicity is sometimes complex. You take the complex resolve and maybe take yourself off of whatever track you're on, explain, discuss, sympathize, empathize, connect in some way, and then get yourself back on track.
Right.
And I think when both parties or whoever's involved have reached a resolve with you on that distraction, because it is.
You're not expecting it. You're not anticipating it.
Right.
But it is life.
It is life.
And you must, if you are someone who has a heart and a soul and you have ethics and you have morality, you're going to deal. Now, if it's a person that most people would deem irrational, that are just coming at you for no good reason, and they're relentless, and they're not reasonable when you're trying to describe, that's a different story.
Right.
Then, that's even more complex. Because again, do you just walk away from them? Well, for self-preservation reasons, I guess maybe you do have to extract yourself to a certain extent. But depending on your relationship with them, what kind of responsibility do you have?
There's a responsibility involved. And it at times takes a responsible action for those things that you're responsible for.
Right. It's not always easy.
Or responsible with. Or
for or with.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I really hope I'm making sense with, instead of, it would be easy to walk away, but it's going to come back and bite you somewhere in the long run by just ignoring it. Or you can handle it effectively, which is, oh God, this is going to take some time away from my focus.
You got to realign.
But you realign.
Yeah.
And it helps you keep you on the straight and narrow, so.
And it depends on how you look at human existence. I mean, is it all just intellectual? Is it intellectual and spiritual? Because I look at it, it's intellectual and spiritual at the very least. And if you were just walking away from people whenever they give you a little bit of grief or a little bit of extra work, how is that going to affect your spiritual existence? I mean, maybe intellectually.
I would think it would weigh it down,
Yeah.
and that's also not keeping it simple.
No.
So that's how I try to strike a balance. Apparently, I'm on the cusp in zodiac signs between a Libra and a Virgo.
I'm a Libra myself.
So I tend to weigh, pun intended, more so on the side of Libra and scales.
The balance.
Exactly, scales
Yeah.
of balance.
Do you put a lot of credo into the astrology?
I can't say that I do.
I read it.
I
read it.
Yeah. So
Just
at
for
times,
pastime.
exactly.
Yeah.
But it's funny how such general terminology can be so applicable to your life.
Especially
at
when
that
you
moment.
need it. Especially when you need
Yeah,
some sort of sense made out of it, whatever your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Libras.
Libras unite.
When's your birthday?
September 23rd.
I'm October 15th.
All right.
Yeah. Again, talking to Owen Baillie. I hope he wrote his birthday down. This is Stories, Wisdom, and Recipes. I'm Lawrence Pugliese, and I would like to mention another time that this program, this episode, is being underwritten by United Cultures Leadership Institute at Lackawanna College. And check out their Facebook site. Very interesting, a lot of good friends there. I also want to let you know that Stories, Wisdom, and Recipes now has a MySpace account. You can access that by typing in www.myspace.com/SWRLP, Swirlip. And
What a fun word.
Swirlip is a great word. It seems like it has something to do with ice cream.
Yeah, it
I'll have
does.
2 Swirlips of that flavor on a pretzel cone, please.
You're onto something. You're onto something.
You
Off
think?
camera, we'll figure this out.
Swirlip. And also, a friend of mine, E.W. Conundrum, wants you to listen to Free Speak in the Afternoon every Monday at 4 until 6 on 99.5 FM WSR Radio. Mondays, 4 to 6, Free Speak with E.W. Conundrum, 99.5 FM. Check it out. But back to Stories, Wisdom, and Recipes. Free Speak is its own entity. We have Owen, and I'm going to ask Owen a little question about inspiration. When you think about people that are inspirational to you, outside of family members, we talked about your mom, who pops into your head?
I have very inspirational family members. And those that are not family by blood, I do consider to be family of some other entity. So there are friends, acquaintances that I've grown up with or that I've met here and formed relationships with through my tenure as an undergrad here at the University of Scranton, through my past places of employment. So I tend to, I don't know what I can attribute it to, but I tend to find good people where it is that I go. So I'm not always too concerned about wherever I might end up.
So just people that, you're not talking about any big named folk, just people that you travel in the same circles with.
It's closer to home when they are in your day-to-day struggle. I understand we're all human, and we all have our own struggles in life, but it's just more tangible for me, and I think I rely on things that are more tangible at times. They don't always have to be, but that's where I find inspiration, on those tangible things. They're not always people, too. It could be a book. It could be an article that I'm reading at the time that helps me figure out how I'm going to stop my leaky faucet from dripping.
Yeah. Oh, that's important to be able to do.
So, knowledge is power, or
comfort.
Or yeah, exactly. So, I don't know that it's difficult for me, again, keeping true to the balance, to point out any one person without having to go through them all, and I don't know that we have enough time. But just to give you perspective where my head is at as far as inspiration goes, I actively seek out inspiration.
And you find it.
And I find it.
Right around
And I find it.
your immediate environment.
Absolutely.
Today
it's everywhere. For me, I see it everywhere.
Me as well.
Everywhere.
Me as well. Oftentimes, though, I have to say I'm also discouraged by people in my immediate environment.
Sure.
Too.
But can you not find some type of inspiration through that?
No, I do. I do.
I do. That's my attitude.
Both is there. Oftentimes, though, I think we tend to focus more on the disheartening experiences than we do the folks who are tried and true and you know, good people.
Absolutely.
We take them for granted maybe. And those folks who maybe, whether it be intentional or unintentionally, just don't live up to maybe what they project themselves as, could set you back a bit.
Sure.
Intellectually, and again, spiritually. You think, darn, I thought that person was going to do some good stuff. Or,
oh, yeah.
Or when we had these conversations, or when I heard them speak, whether it be a politician or, you know, whatever, a coworker, a neighbor, and then I saw their actions, and I see their actions, you know, and I see a trend. Wow, I have to say they're not that kind of person. That could be discouraging.
It can be.
You know, and the reason I bring it up is because a lot of us go through that. You don't want it to end up making you, as I said earlier, bitter, though, or to close, to give up.
Right.
And how much do you invest yourself emotionally, too? I mean, that's another thing you have. What's healthy? You have to watch.
Just try to strike a balance in between the two.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because it's taxing, investing emotionally in ... But
Yeah.
putting in that effort, whatever it is. Sure.
Whatever it is.
Sure.
Go, I'm sorry.
No, I would tend to agree with that, Larry. I really would.
And distraction definitely lies in emotion. There's no doubt. But emotion is very necessary. Otherwise, you're cutting out a very, very valuable part of the human existence.
Hierarchy of needs.
Yeah, yeah. Didn't we mention that recently?
I think we did.
Yeah, it's Maslow or Pavlov? Maslow, right?
I would think it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah, Pavlov
was the dogs.
Was the dogs ringing the bell.
Yeah.
Ding, ding, ding. Salivating. So, the U.S. today, what are some of its biggest challenges as you see it in society?
Some of the biggest challenges are the United States of America.
That's correct, sir.
I think optimism as a whole
Is a challenge?
is a challenge.
Is that to say that we don't have enough of it as a society?
We've had a lot of it and are having difficulty, I think, since you're asking me, managing a declining level of it. As if to say, I'm not so sure what's going on anymore. This is not the world I might have grown up in. And I think it's more perceived with negative undertones.
That's the general mentality you're saying, that where the optimism is lost, when people don't understand what they're seeing in front
It's
of them?
short-lived, but I think it's a nuisance. It's serving as a nuisance right now. I think that people are seeing unemployment dally just as the graphs of the New York Stock Exchange, up and down, and it's playing with people's emotions and sense of security. And it's a nuisance. It's a nuisance, and I know that I feel much better in a routine. I feel much better with the steady. Hopefully, a good steady, but this sporadic and unpredictable nature that we're in, I think, is affecting the mindset of a lot of folk throughout each demographic and each socioeconomic status, each age group. And but I would like to voice again, I think it's short-lived. I think it's just a nuisance, a short-lived nuisance that ultimately we realize, oh, we're still the United States of America.
Well, when you say nuisance, I know what you mean.
Okay.
It depends. Like you and I are fortunate. We have a good steady.
Absolutely.
Both of us.
We do.
You know, where we feel a sense of respect. We make a decent wage.
Sure.
Not rich, but not poor. But there are people out there where they're struggling to try to make ends meet, to
Yeah.
get the basic needs, the roof, the heat, the electricity, the food, looking at their kids and not being able to feed them. More than a nuisance for them, I think. You
Safe
would
to
agree.
say.
But you're looking at the psyche of our system as a whole.
As a whole.
And you think we're
Speaking
going to get
extreme.
through, and we're going to get through it, you believe. You think the system will get through it.
I don't believe there's much choice. That we will get through it, and which will involve uncomfortable circumstances. And this is part of it, what we're going through right now. It's a very scary and ugly thing for many, many people.
Do you think it stems from some sort of greed and injustice where we are today? Economically we're talking, and how a lot of folks are hurting, and how the system has been, hit hard to where, it's shaky at the knees.
Right.
Do you think it comes from, it just happened, or did it come from some of the lesser impulses of the human?
Okay, yeah. I don't tend to think on many accounts that things just happen. That at some point there was, at several points, not some point, at several points there was a degradation, a devaluation of some moral or some ethic principle for a short-term fix that affected the majority of people for a much longer time. So I think it's systematic. I also think that the finger pointing goes around the room, and everybody had a stake in it. Everybody had a stake.
And when you think about like the big banks today, you're talking about how some are going to suffer longer than others. One of the bigger banks in the U.S., I don't recall the name, I kind of heard it passing a radio in the house today.
Merrill Lynch.
3.3 billion.
Surplus.
Yep.
That's correct.
Yep, 3.3 billion surplus this quarter.
It's tough to swallow.
Yeah, and they're going to give out big bonuses to their employees.
As it's been reported.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is tough to swallow.
Yeah, it is, actually.
They had a big role in creating the mess. We bailed them out
Right.
with our money, and then they make huge profits, and we still, our 401ks, our retirement funds, down by a third for most people. And it's not going to be really quick for us to get it back,
Right.
establish that wealth again for ourselves.
Oh, that's right.
It stinks, to put it very bluntly. It doesn't seem fair to me. And if they fall, then everything falls apart, so we can't let them fail. The bigger banks, we can't let them fail.
Seems more like tyranny
Yes, doesn't it?
than anything.
It does.
I think the systematic, I think devaluation of our principles has widened this gap of wealth and class economically, and it will take time to bring it closer. Some people don't have that time,
Exactly.
and others do, but it will be uncomfortable.
I like what you just said. Some people don't have that time. I had a discussion with a friend of mine who has a different set of ideas when it comes to the economic landscape and policy. He's more of a Republican, today's Republican sort of mentality, and I'm not. And he was saying it's a cycle. These things happen. It's unfortunate, but we'll get it back together over a certain span of time. And I said what you said, but some people don't have that kind of time. Some people, 10 years, 15 years, at that point, the opportunity to pay for their child to go to college has passed.
Has passed.
The opportunity for them to start that business that they've always dreamed about has passed. To buy that house has passed. What do you say to them?
Their life's effort served as a pawn in this game.
Right.
Tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, it certainly is. So we'll just put more cable television channels on, and give them more options on the dollar menu, and they'll forget about it.
Distraction.
Yeah. Keep it simple and understand what it is that's important. We all get lost. I do on occasion.
I think
With the distractions.
our current circumstance proves that we were all lost at some point.
And I think, we're working with a leadership institute and a leadership academy. We're working with young people to try to get them to learn more about the history of this country in terms of economics, human diversity, the natural environment, and where we are today, the future, teach them how to be independent thinkers. And in general, that's what we're trying to do with the Institute. One of the things that is so important, I think, that both of us agree with, is that you have to be an independent, knowledgeable individual, independent thinker, critical thinker, and you have to have a knowledge base. Otherwise, you can't understand the complexities of the situations. Even when you do have the knowledge and you are an independent thinker, it's still hard to understand something like healthcare reform. But most people don't get that kind of training. They don't have the opportunity to garner that sort of knowledge and those skills of thinking. So when they're presented healthcare reform, how in God's name, and then they're working 60 hours a week on top of it just to pay the bills, how are they going to understand what's best for them?
They're not.
They don't, yeah, not that they're dumb. They're not given the opportunity to nurture or to use what they do have. And that only plays out so that those in power don't have anybody asking them questions.
Two scenarios I'll ask you. We'll flip the script here.
Okay.
When was the last time you spoke to a customer service representative regarding healthcare? Maybe you're with Blue Cross, Blue Shield, or whatever have you.
Those are bank statements. They have $10.
Oh, those are bank statements.
Go ahead.
Yes, with fees, I'm sure, right?
No doubt.
Okay. So, but I guess my point.
I'm sorry.
No, I think it's more rhetorical. But the point is to say that the people in the industry themselves don't necessarily know what it is that they're doing.
No.
As
it's a script.
Service, it's a script.
Yes.
It's a script to keep people lost.
Yeah.
And off focus.
Yes. Well, to some people, we might be sounding like conspiracy theorists that don't, trust anybody, and sour milk perhaps is sour grapes, I should say, because we're not rich or what have you. But I would disagree. What little knowledge I have and little experience I have, I'm pretty certain that things aren't on the up and up, and they're not fairly. Access is not fairly distributed to institutions that allow people to really become who they have the potential to become and to really, really be part of the process.
It's true. Sorry that it comes off that way.
What?
Sour grapes.
Yeah. Well, you get hit with that.
Sorry if it sounds that way.
Yeah. Sour grapes. Crazy people. Change the channel. Oh, King of Queens. I like this.
Temporary escape, distraction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes we need that, but that can't be our MO. That can't be the way you live.
I agree.
I'm starting to preach now. I better stop. Let me ask another question.
Go ahead.
Why should we be helping countries that are less developed than our own country? Or should we? I mean, I presume you'd say we should help less developed countries with their social and economic challenges. Why should we do that?
It's a safe presumption. And I would say that we, as the United States, should help out developed and currently developing countries. You had mentioned human potential and how we tend to serve as the pawns of our society at times, and good, hard-working, well-intentioned, educated people end up getting the short end of the stick. Life savings gone, life dreams gone. For what? It's hard for me to look anybody in the face and say, "Hey, we should be helping somebody else." But I would ask them, through that hard glance, to realize that we all have stake in each other, not just as United States, globally. And that helping are continuing to help those that are slowly helping themselves and push them along can inevitably help us in the long run.
How do you see it helping us, the U.S., us, in the long run?
Right.
How do you see that helping us? You know, when we do assist a country to be independent and to be, you know, to have those pillar institutions operating effectively, so that the folks may actualize their potential. How does that help us?
Well, I mean, and I think we had spoken on this before, but
Seems like just yesterday.
It seems like just yesterday. It does. This country is really based on, or falls on the shoulders of immigrants that came with ideas, came with value systems, and put them into place, amongst many other things, but I'm just highlighting those for the sake of the point. That if we don't help other countries or the individuals in those developed and developing countries reach their potential, we could be missing out on some very great things for our own society, for our own culture.
I mean, new insights into...
New insights, discoveries that can help us with ailments, disease, with things that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
But it comes to mind, and so it's moral, it's ethical, but it's also pragmatic. It does bring us new intellectual insight offerings.
Sure.
I mean, when we're talking about the U.S., where we have problems, there's no doubt. But all in all, relatively speaking, we're a pretty good country as countries go.
Absolutely.
In terms of freedom and opportunity and fairness. We're not perfect. Nobody really is perfect. But as President Obama says, and I'm paraphrasing, to achieve perfection is something hard to even fathom, but you try to create a more perfect union. And you know, we're doing all right comparatively.
Comparatively, yeah.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean we got it down. And there aren't any problems. But you made me think about President Obama. I mean, his dad, who I don't know a lot about, but I believe there was some sort of program that helped him come from Kenya.
From Kenya, yeah.
To the United States.
That's correct.
And he met his wife from
Kansas, yeah.
And they had Barack.
Correct.
And if that program didn't exist...
Case in point.
Yeah.
Case in point.
How do you think President Obama is doing on this day, January 14th, 2010? At this point, how do you think he's doing?
I think he's doing very well.
What makes you say that?
My gauge, though, is, or how I rate he's doing. From my point, I like a commander-in-chief. I like a boss in my work. I like a partner in my personal life. I like a teammate, somebody that is willing to level with you and tackle the ugly problems genuinely to work them out. And I don't really feel that there's much more that serves as, you know, backing it up, talking the talk and walking the walk. Now, I'm not looking at it from an unemployment standpoint or the standpoint that the general populace might say, scroll, these are these numbers, these are these numbers, this is the worst it's ever been. I think I understand that. We can point at that all day. But what I would like for you to have a dialogue with me is, what is your recollection of what's being put into practice? And oftentimes people aren't all too aware. And through the power of the internet and media, but more so the internet, I don't know if you follow the president's address, but there are messages from the president on YouTube that come out weekly, where he's addressing the people, talking to the people. And I don't, it's unfortunate to think that an operation that was run on the grassroots and was so successful, for some reason, is not being utilized as it was intended. Because the same people that might have been supporters or still are supporters have difficulty articulating what's being put into practice. There are things being put into practice, believe it or not.
You mean through
legislation being set? Yeah, absolutely.
Through the efforts of the administration,
Absolutely.
the Obama administration, and
you should highlight the administration. It's an all hands on deck approach.
So you like the way he operates. You like the way.
I do.
And some people would say he's an operator, but you're saying he's not. He's genuine. I heard you say genuine. He tackles the tough issues in a fair-minded way. Is that safe to say?
Yeah.
In an open way, in a pragmatic way. A lot of people say he's a pragmatist. Some liberals have a problem with him because he's not idealistic enough, as they would hope. In other words, they want him to say all of this is going to happen, or
none.
Or none. And the other side, Republicans, it seems to me, at least my own personal opinion, they just don't want to see anything happen coming from his administration. I mean, the votes.
Actions would suggest that.
The votes would, yeah. If you look at the voting record, it would back up that assertion.
It would back up that assertion.
Yeah.
Actually.
So I would agree with you. I think he's doing a good job in that regard as well.
But that's my gauge. And so again, that's to each their own.
Of course.
The next guest might have another answer, and that's fair to consider. But that's how I gauge a commander-in-chief, and how I gauge my comfort level with that person.
Well, you seem like a pragmatist too.
I tend to think I am too, especially more so that we've had this discussion.
Oh yeah, you're starting to.
I think I've seen the light. I've seen the light.
A small fee. I'll be.
Is this Kool-Aid? So
that's a nice reference. I like that.
Yeah.
The hippies will enjoy that one. By the way, hippies or other folk watching the show, this is Stories, Wisdom, and Recipes. I'm Lawrence Pugliese, a little tired today, with my guest Owen Baillie. He is the assistant to the Vice President of Social Justice and Diversity at the Commonwealth Medical College. And he's also an advisory board member of United Cultures Leadership Institute, who, by the way, is underwriting this episode of Stories, Wisdom, and Recipes. We have, 5-10 minutes left, Anthony? So we better get to, I have a bunch of questions here from Mr. Baillie. We won't get to all of them. Martin Luther King, the Reverend Doctor, we're celebrating his life's work this weekend. And what?
Celebrating it directly this weekend. Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
It should be, I think he's one of the greatest leaders to ever walk the face of the earth. And he's an inspiration to me always. But it's nice to have a weekend to celebrate in particular.
Directly, I agree.
Now, when you're looking at Dr. King, you think courage, right? And you think humility. And some people, I found, and myself included at a certain point in my life, couldn't see those two attributes happening simultaneously. How could he be courageous and have a certain level of humility simultaneously? How could you do that? And why should you do that?
Why should you? Sure.
You want to respond to that?
I will. I'll respond to the fact that his level of selflessness and giving of self, and being humble for a cause greater than himself, for generations that he did not know or how they would respond, what they would necessarily look like or react to. Just the principle that his efforts could help lead a movement for a better tomorrow for all that walked after him. Seems high and mighty. Seems that it could be even full of threat. But he walked his walk through his talk, and it just, as I think about it more so and try to ground myself in that ideological principle of selflessness, and it's heavy, it's impressive. It's what I owe much of my stature to, much of my humility to realize I am not that without those that came before me.
Yeah.
And he was one of many great people.
Well, he was inspired by Gandhi.
Exactly.
Among others. And I'm sure Jesus Christ inspired him too. He was a pretty religious man.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, grew up in a household of ministers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. As I understand it, his grandfather was a preacher, his father was a preacher, and he was co-pastor at that church where both his grandfather and his father served. So, talk about influence, it's timely. You look at that influence, absolutely.
Now, there are some events for those who are, this will be broadcast over the weekend
Okay.
before Monday, Dr. King Day, MLK Day. I see there's so many titles. I think I'm supposed to say, what's the best way to present the man? Is it Reverend Dr. King? Or is it Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? Or is it Reverend? You know, I think it's, I've heard
Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King.
Yeah. That's
Junior.
That's all inclusive. Junior as well. Monday is the day we honor him in the United States of America, and there are some events in Scranton. We mentioned that you're part of the MLK Commission.
That is correct.
I know there's one event in particular on Monday at 10:30 a.m., right?
Yes.
You're going to be the Master of Ceremonies.
MC, that's
Yeah.
correct. Yes, I will be. And I will be working with Sister Mary Alice Jacqueline at the Friends of the Poor here in Scranton to really kick off a nice fun event for local youths and their families in honor of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So that's at 10:30. There are actually events going on concurrently to this program.
Let me ask you this though: Where is that happening? That particular event on Monday at 10:30?
Gosh, it's right on Olive Street, where the Friends of the Poor House.
Wow. You're thinking of the Progressive Center.
I'm sorry. Yes.
But you misunderstood my question. The 10:30 event is at the DeNaples Center, I think, right? At the University of Scranton, or no?
No, I don't have my cheat sheet with me.
But
what I could put in a plug for where the cheat sheet could be found would be
website?
The website, and that's www.scrantonmlkcommission, as one word, Ning, which is N as in Nancy, I, N as in Nancy, G, .com.
Okay. I'm almost certain that the 10:30 event is at the DeNaples Center.
It may very well be.
Yeah.
Events. There were events last night at the DeNaples Center. A grouping of interfaith leaders in our community discussing their beliefs and how Dr. Martin Luther King and his ideologies filtered throughout those beliefs. So that was very thought-provoking discussion. And today there are more events going on in high school. I forget exactly what high schools.
I think Scranton High School is doing something. From what I read, I've gone to the cheat sheet.
You've gone to the cheat sheet online. Yeah. Great.
Yeah, there's a
brunch tomorrow at Lackawanna College at 11.
Tomorrow would be Saturday.
Tomorrow would be Saturday.
Yeah, the 16th of January.
Correct.
And then on Monday, there is also, after the 10:30 event, later in the day, there's I think at the Courthouse Square.
Correct.
There's a march.
There'll be a march.
Yeah. Yeah, so go to the website, check all that stuff out, and
Definitely encourage you to do so.
it's all free too. Well, not all free. I think the brunch you have to pay for.
The brunch is the only event that you would have to pay for, and that is really just to cover the cost of the awards that we have purchased for the youths and the local business owners that we'll be honoring, and that these people throughout their will really have embodied the spirit of Martin Luther King.
And the spirit of Martin Luther King in one word? I know that's hard. How about?
No, I like this. We're going to go with it.
Yeah, okay. At this moment in one word.
At this moment in one word. Omnipresent.
Omnipresent. That's a good thing. I don't mind him being omnipresent, his spirit. Owen Baillie, here on Stories, Wisdom, and Recipes. Again, an advisory board member of United Cultures Leadership Institute, and they are underwriting this episode of Stories, Wisdom, and Recipes. Check their site out on Facebook. Also, myspace.com/swirlup, SWRLP, for Stories, Wisdom, and Recipes, little place on the web. And listen to Free Speak every Monday from 4 to 6 on 99.5 FM. Mr. Baillie, we'll have to continue this conversation. Time is up this time. And now I'd like to share a little essay, another one, with you today. Hollywood days and Dixon City nights, traveling up and down Route 6 looking for a bite, camped out in the pageantry of commercially driven ventures, while some other chatterbox is setting in a warm plastic cup his latest set of dentures. Where does this all come from? Where does it all go? Who's in charge? Who's writing the show? Does it all connect somehow at some place? Are we going too slow or too fast? Which is the accurate pace? The lightning-incensed origins of most human passions leave us delving throughout leagues and purchases that sometimes our Einsteins can nary fathom. But again, substantive hope, with your focus significantly just and pragmatic, must be mentioned, nurtured, and supported. So diplomatic. If we believe our time here can afford us a life where we poignantly and soulfully have at it. Buon anno. Thank you for watching.